Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadamahyam Dadati Svabhadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vishnuvam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaurtushe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarurvyascha Kripasindhubhevacha Paridanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Ganadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vitrekapanaya Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Gitamrita Duhe Namaha Namaste Te Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Fullarvindaya Tapatra Netre Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha. So we welcome all of you to Unit 2 study of Bhakti Sastri or Gita Sastri. We'll study the middle 6 chapters of Bhagavad-gita in this section, chapters 7 to 12. Bhagavad-gita is all nice because all the shlokas coming in Bhagavad-gita are instructions from the Supreme Lord. However, because the Supreme Lord speaks on different topics in Gita, some topics are more nice. The middle 6 chapters are closely associated with the topic of bhakti or devotion. So these 6 chapters are relished by devotees the most. Srila Vishvanatha Thakur says that if the whole Bhagavad-gita is a jewel box, then the middle 6 chapters are the precious jewels inside that box. And that's why these 6 chapters, they talk a lot about Krishna. The first 6 chapters, they spoke a lot about the jiva. What is the jiva's duty? Who is the living entity? What are the different yoga systems that a living entity can take to make spiritual progress? So it was all centered around the living entity, the self. Whereas the middle 6 chapters, they are all centered around Krishna. If you want to see that, just look at the titles of all the 6 chapters. The first title is knowledge of the absolute, means it's knowledge of Krishna. Then the 8th chapter is attaining the supreme, that supreme is Krishna. The 9th chapter is most confidential knowledge about whom? Krishna. The opulences of the absolute. Who is the absolute? Krishna. Then the universal form. Whose form it is? Krishna's form, right? So all those chapters which are in the middle portion of Gita, they particularly speak about Krishna and speak about Krishna's energies and his relationship with his energies. Establishing the fact that he is the supreme controller. Everything happens as is ordained by him. That's why he should be worshipped by one and all. That's the theme of these 6 chapters. In the previous chapter, chapter 6, where we stopped in the previous class, the last verse said, Yoginam api sarvesham Madgatena antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mataha. Of all the yogis, who is most intimately united with me? Bhakti yogi, a devotee. There he gave this preview, and now in the coming 6 chapters, he's going to give a detailed description of what is Bhakti Yoga. Chapter 7 will be only introducing Bhakti Yoga. Chapter 8 will be introducing pure Bhakti. And chapter 9 will be describing in detail what pure Bhakti is. Okay, this is how it goes. 7 introduces Bhakti, 8 introduces pure Bhakti, 9 describes what pure Bhakti is. And once chapter 9 is over, Gita is complete actually. The last instruction of chapter 9 is the ultimate instruction of Bhagavad-gita, the most conclusive instruction of Gita. So Gita completes in chapter 9. What happens after chapter 9 is basically a repetition of the same knowledge given before in Gita, but in much more detail. Just clarifying some more doubts of Arjuna, some reconfirmations, and then few extra things added here and there. But chapter 9 concludes the message of Gita. What Krishna wants to speak to Arjuna, ultimately he has spoken in 9.34, Manmana bhav madbhakto madhyajimam namaskuru, that verse. So now let's start with this chapter 7. Here today we are going to complete 12 verses. So the first 3 verses, they tell us that knowing Krishna in full is possible by hearing about him. The process of hearing is emphasized here, and knowledge of Krishna is also glorified here. Let's start with the first verse. Give me a second, please. Let me open the shlokas. Chapter 7, shloka 1. Maya sakta Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Maya sakta manah partha Yogam yunjan madashrayaha Asangshayang samagram mam Yatha gyasasi tatshino. We'll read 2 more. Jnanam deham savijnanam idam vakshyami asheshataha yajñātvā neha bhūyonyaj gyātavyam avashishyate. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatati siddhaye yatatam apisiddhanam kaschin mamaveti tatvataha. So the first verse says, Maya sakta manaha partha yogam yunjan madashrayaha asangshayang samagram yatha gyasasi tatshino. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. It's interesting. Though Krishna is talking to Arjuna and Arjuna is quite attentive, still Krishna is telling Arjuna, hear. Generally, a teacher tells that to a student when the student is spaced out, not really hearing. But here, Arjuna is quite attentively hearing, but Krishna is still telling Arjuna, you must hear, Arjuna. Why? Because he wants to tell Arjuna one more very important thing by speaking that word, that the knowledge which I am going to give you now, which is Bhakti Yoga, can only be assimilated by hearing it from the right authority. This knowledge cannot be learned just by experience in the world. Many things we learn in this world by experience. But this knowledge of devotional service to Krishna is only learned by hearing it from the right source. There's no other way. That is the only way. That's how this knowledge begins to come inside or begins to enter our life. That's the only way. And if you want to get into the depth of this knowledge or higher and purer levels of this knowledge, again, the process is to hear only. That's the science. So the whole purport, if you look at here, Srila Prabhupada emphasizes on the process of hearing. We will read the purport. Let's read first two paragraphs. I'll ask someone to read. Okay, we have Dhananjay Prabhu. Would you like to read, please? First paragraph. Are you there, Dhananjay Prabhu? No?
Oh, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
In this 7th chapter of Bhagavad-gita, the nature of Krishna consciousness is fully described. Krishna is full in all opulences, and how he manifests such opulences is described herein. Also, 4 kinds of fortunate people who become attached to Krishna and 4 kinds of unfortunate people who never take to Krishna are described in this chapter.
So,
In the first
Sripad gives a brief explanation of what this chapter is all about. Yes, sorry, please read the second paragraph also.
In the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad-gita, the living entity has been described as non-material spirit, soul, capable of elevating himself to self-realization by different types of yogis. At the end of 6th chapter, it has been clearly stated that the steady concentration of the mind upon Krishna, or in other words, Krishna consciousness, is the highest form of all yoga. By the concentrating one's mind upon Krishna, one is able to know the absolute truth completely, but not otherwise. Impersonal Brahma Jyotir, or localized Paramatma realization, is not perfect knowledge of the absolute truth because it's partial. Full and scientific knowledge is Krishna, and everything is revealed to the person in Krishna consciousness. In complete Krishna consciousness, one knows that Krishna is ultimate knowledge beyond any doubts. Different types of yoga are only stepping stones on the path of Krishna consciousness. One who takes directed to Krishna consciousness, automatically knows about Brahma Jyotir and Paramatma in full. By practice of Krishna consciousness yoga, one can know everything in full, namely the absolute truth, the living entities, the material nature, and their manifestations with paraphernalia.
Thank you. One thing you might have noticed while reading the purpose given by Srila Prabhupada, that he nowhere leaves any chance to elaborate on the topics of Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, on the topic of impersonalism, Mayavad. And sometimes to the reader, it may appear that this is being repeated too often. I mean, he just told about this in the purport previous to previous verse, then previous to that verse. And in the entire Gita, you'll find the same topic again and again being told by Srila Prabhupada. So we should understand one thing, that though Bhagavad-gita, as it is written by Srila Prabhupada, has universal application and it's for all times, but we should also look at the scenario that existed when Prabhupada was present on the planet. When Prabhupada was present on the planet, most of the, or not most, all of the English editions of Bhagavad-gita, they emphasized a lot on impersonal view of God. Every book, even the top-notch authors who are considered as great scholars of Vedanta and Vedic literatures, they only talked about impersonal aspect of Supreme Lord. And that had become the general norm. People took that as spirituality only. People did not really take the bhakti aspect of spirituality as the essential. So that's why Srila Prabhupada is always hitting on that nail wherever he gets the chance, on trying to tell people that it's not so. The devotion aspect, the Bhagavan aspect of Krishna is the supremost. So that's why this topic comes up again and again. Now further in this purport, Prabhupada talks about 9 types of devotional service, which you can see here on the screen. You know this, I guess. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam. These are 9 types of devotional service known as Navadha, Navvidha Bhakti, and it all starts with Shravanam, hearing. Then comes the next Kirtanam, chanting or speaking. And then comes Smaranam, remembering. So it is systematic development. If I have not heard properly, I will not be able to speak properly. Very simple, like some of you yesterday gave the examination. If you would not have read properly or heard properly, you would also not have been able to write properly. So those who did hear or read, they wrote well. Those who did not, they did not. Interestingly, I won't tell the scores now. Some papers are already corrected. But one student who doesn't attend the class often scored very poor marks. And that was quite obvious because was not attending the class, thought I'll just catch up with the exam somehow the later, I'll do my self-study and pass. But the answers showed that was not really grounded in the subject matter, did not study well because was not attending the classes well. So this is a science. I hear well, I'll be able to speak well. If I'm able to speak well, then I'll be able to also remember well. Right? So if the purpose of our spiritual practice is we want to come to that level, we want to remember Krishna all the time, then we have to also hear about Krishna quite a lot. Then it's possible to also remember Krishna. Whatever goes on in our mind is a product of what all we have allowed to go into our ears for so many years that we have spent in this life. And whatever we have spent in the previous lives. That's what goes in the mind. Everything. You hear any movie song, that's what will start playing automatically in the mind. So if you want to remember Krishna, the first thing is you hear about Krishna. And if I have done hearing properly, then I'll be able to do all the rest also very well, all of them. That's the importance of hearing. Hearing, it actually captures Krishna within the heart. I'll tell you an interesting anecdote, like Prabhupada, he mentions here. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. How it happens is, when we hear about Krishna from the right source, it sets up our attitude. Because a certain attitude is required to understand Krishna, that attitude can only be developed by hearing from those who have that attitude. Words are not just combinations of alphabets. Words are also combinations of the energy of the person who is speaking those words. That energy cannot be always, described or calculated mathematically, but that energy can be felt. Like if you happen to read Srila Prabhupada books a lot, then if you read another book which has been written by a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, you'll feel the same energy. Why? Because this person is borrowing his energy from Srila Prabhupada. So though the words will be different, the energy felt in those words will be the same, because the source is the same. The mood is the same. The attitude is the same. So the words, they carry not just information, they also carry a lot of other levels of energy, right? And through that, the knowledge gets transmitted. Now, tell you an interesting story. Once there was a merchant, a rich person, he got sick. He was having a severe headache. He went to many doctors. The doctors were giving him so many different kinds of medicines. He tried everything, allopathy, Ayurvedic, naturopathy, homeopathy, nothing worked. And he was suffering terribly. So then he asked one of his friends, can you please give me a solution? I mean, it's just a small problem. It's a headache, but it's not going for weeks now. Can you help me? So that friend told, you know what? I don't believe in doctors, but I believe in sadhus. So tomorrow I heard in our town, one mystic is going to come. and he's known for all kinds of magic and stuff. So you go to him, tell your problem, he'll solve it immediately. The man said, okay. He goes to meet this mystic yogi. So the yogi closes his eyes, sits down on meditation for some time, assures the person, don't worry at all, I'm going to solve all your problems. And then when he opens the eyes, he tells him, I'll ask you to do one simple thing. And the person says, yes, please tell. You should only see green color. That's all. If you do that, all your problem will be solved. And the person said, that's not difficult. So he goes back home, right? And the yogi had also told him it will only take 3 days. After 3 days, no headache. And the person said, all right. So he went and he did not come back. And this person became a little curious to know whether he's still okay or sick, what happened. So the yogi decided to visit the house of this person. As he rang the bell, the servant opened the door. And the servant was standing there with a green paint bucket. He was having a green paint bucket. And the yogi said, what's going on? He said, sir, we have an order from our boss that whoever enters the house should be painted green. So they said, come on, this doesn't make sense. Why is this going on? And then he told, go and tell him that his guru has come. And when the merchant heard that, he came out of the house running, oh, Gurudev, please come inside. And when he went inside, the Guru saw everything was green. The walls, the furniture, the clothes, the food items, people were painted green, everything was green. So he asked, what's going on, my dear son? You told me I should see only green. So I painted everything green. And the yogi said, stupid fellow, why did you have to paint everything green? You could have used a green glass. If you would have used a green glass, everything would be seen green. You don't have to paint everything green for that. So the yogi there wanted to teach that person that if you want to see everything green, that's possible if you change your vision. Similarly, if we have to develop devotion to Krishna, we have to change our attitude, our outlook. And how do you change that outlook? That is possible only by hearing. So in this regard, there is a shloka which comes, very, very, very famous shloka from Brahma Samhita. Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena santa sadeva hridayeshu vilokayanti yam shama sundaram achintya guna sarupam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So you see the picture of His Holiness Gaur Govind Swami Maharaj here on the slide. Someday I would speak about him in some session. Amazing Vaishnavas are there in our society. Of course, he's not present now physically. He left his body in 96. But he was a great Vaishnava, a really, really great Vaishnava. You can see from his face and his eyes, always absorbed in love of Krishna. So Gaur Govind Swami Maharaj, he explained, like this verse says from Brahma Samhita, Prema Anjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena. When one's eyes are anointed with the salve of love for Krishna, then Santa Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram. One will be seeing Sham Sundar Krishna everywhere. But for that, one's eyes have to be anointed with the salve of love. Right? The salve of love, in India, people know it very well. In Western countries, I don't know if people do that. Of course, they put mascara, but then in India, the way you produce kajal is different than people would be producing in the Western countries, right? If you have seen this in your days of babyhood or childhood, and I don't know, nowadays mothers still do that you light up a lamp, and then from lamp the black soot is collected, and from that you make kajal, and then you put on the eyes, right? Or you put on the face of the baby, neck of the baby, to protect the baby from evil eye. So that's called kajal. And if you put that on your eyes, it says that it gives you good vision, it gives you clear vision, isn't it? So Maharaj used to ask this question that Where will you buy the kajal, the ointment that will make us see Krishna? Is that available somewhere to buy it from? He said it's not available in any market. That anjana develops on the eye of the person by a different process. And what is that process? When we hear about Krishna from those people who have developed love for Krishna, then those sound vibrations, they enter our ear, and through our ear, they enter our mind. Antahakarana, the mind. And in that mind develops some loving sentiments for Krishna. When these loving sentiments which have developed in the mind then come on top of the inner eyes that we have. Now, the external eye is the organ, but the inner eye that we have, when this feeling or sentiment comes on top of that, that becomes the ointment of love on the eye. So that is the process. The process is you hear, and that hearing will produce this salve of love, the ointment, and then one will be able to see Krishna everywhere. That's how hearing is so important. And that's why Krishna begins by telling about this particular thing. Arjuna, hear now. Now you hear. Then you can understand me. When Lord Krishna had left the material world, some of his queens, they did not go. They were left behind. The queens from Dwarka. Because some of these queens were demigoddesses. They were not eternal associates of Lord Krishna. They were goddesses who had come from heaven, who had gotten an opportunity to act as wives of Krishna, which means they were not yet very pure or completely pure to enter into the spiritual world. So Krishna left them behind. And then these queens, they got kidnapped by some cowherd boys, but later on they were saved and brought to Mathura, then to Vrindavan. So when these queens, they met Yamuna Devi, they had a conversation with her, and Yamuna Devi told those queens, I am never separated from Krishna. So the queen said, how is it so? Krishna is long time gone to his eternal abode. There is no Krishna here. So how is that you are not separated from Krishna? We are separated from Krishna. How is that you are not separated? So Yamuna told that what you see is the external manifestation. There is an internal pastime or lila always going on. Nitya lila, the eternal pastime of the Lord. And I am one of the associates of the Lord in the eternal pastime. And you people are not. So those ladies, they become a little sad and they said, how can we also become associates of Krishna in Nitya Leela? You also want to enter into eternal abode. So Yamuna Devi told at that time, the only way is to hear about Krishna from someone who loves Krishna. And that time, then those ladies expressed the desire, we want to hear. Then Uddhava, who was residing in Vrindavan in the form of creepers, he came out. And Uddhava narrated Krishna's pastimes to these ladies. That place is still there in Vrindavan, where Uddhava told all these pastimes. So Uddhava narrated these pastimes to these queens of Dwarka, and then they got the opportunity to enter into Krishna's Golok Dham by hearing. So hearing is, that's why so important, and Krishna is putting that here. Of course, Krishna does not speak in detail about that word here. He just hints to Arjuna, but the significance of hearing is so much. Okay. Then let's go to the next verse where Krishna says, what will you hear about from me in this chapter? What will you hear about? Jnanam teham savikyanam idam vakshyam yasheshataha yach gyatva neha bhuyonyach 𝗵𝗶𝗹𝗹 avashishyate. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. Jnana translates to phenomenal and Vijnana translates to numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. You will know everything because you will have both Jnana and Vijnana. Two words are used here. These words would be repeatedly used in the Bhagavad-gita. So we'll just look at these two words. What do they actually mean? So jnana can mean phenomenal knowledge, as mentioned here in this verse. It is theoretical knowledge. It is knowledge about Krishna's material and spiritual energies, or the knowledge about Krishna's greatness. Vijnana, also known as Vishesha Jnana, is knowledge about Krishna's sweetness. So the previous one was knowledge about Krishna's greatness. The second one is knowledge about Krishna's sweetness. Krishna as God is great, but Krishna as God is also very sweet. Those who are interested in the grandeur of Krishna are interested in Krishna's greatness. So the religions like Islam and Christianity, they focus a lot on God's greatness, the grandeur of God. Like in Islam, they say Allahu Akbar, which means God is great. Right? Whereas in Vaishnavism, talking about the Vaishnavism which takes you to Golok Vrindavan, it focuses more on Krishna's sweetness, madhurya. God's sweetness becomes so prevalent that God himself forgets about his greatness. That's called madhurya, or the sweetness. God doesn't behave like God anymore. And that adds a very sweet flavor to all his pastimes there. Look at Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, acting like a baby, stealing butter, dancing with young girls, telling lies. So all that is totally against the image of someone who is God. But Krishna still does that. So that is Vijnana, knowledge about Krishna, realized knowledge about his personality and sweetness. So where do you find these topics covered? In chapters 7 and 8, which we are going to study, you will find Jnana described a lot. In chapter 9, you'll have Vijnana described a lot. And in chapter 10 and 11, we'll have Jnana and Vijnana mixed and both described. About Krishna's greatness, Krishna's sweetness. Like asking you, Krishna's universal form, what is that? Greatness or sweetness?
Greatness.
Greatness, correct? Now Krishna telling, I am lying amongst humans. Then what is that? Greatness. So chapter 10 is Vibhuta Yoga, that is also Krishna's greatness. But then Krishna telling, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati. If you offer me one leaf, one flower, one fruit, little water, I'll accept it. What is that?
Sweetness.
Krishna's sweetness. That you offer me this much little, I'll be happy with it. That is Krishna's sweetness. Or Krishna telling, Ananaya Shintayanto Mam, whoever worships with unalloyed devotion, I provide that person everything that person lacks. And I protect everything that person has. What is that? That is Krishna's sweetness.
Yes.
A sweet reciprocation with the devotee's devotion for him. Okay. So in this way now, when we study chapters 7 to 11, whenever we read a particular verse, you have to then, in your mind, try to understand, is this verse about Krishna's greatness or is this verse about Krishna's sweetness? Is it Jnana or is it Vijnana? Okay. The definition is there in front of you on the screen. What is Jnana and what is Vijnana? On the basis of that, we can decide. Moving further on, then the third verse. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatamapi siddhanam kaschin mam veti tattvataha. Now Krishna is telling, though this knowledge is so special and knowing this, you will be knowing everything, this knowledge is very rare. It's not easily obtained. It's very, very rare. How rare it is? That even if you study the Vedas, you may not come to know this knowledge. It is so rare. Even if you are diving deep in the Vedas, still you may not understand. that this is the truth. This is the highest truth. Krishna is such a hidden God that even if you search for him, he may always remain hidden from us. That's how he is, very mysterious. So he says this is very rare knowledge, very, very rare. Translation goes like this: out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection. That's true, isn't it? So many billions of human beings, but only few of them are interested in any form of spirituality. And then further, he writes in the translation, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Of those who have achieved perfection refers to whom? Those who are self-realized souls, those who can see Atma and Paramatma. Of them also, very few can know Krishna in truth. That much rare knowledge about Krishna is. Let's read the first paragraph. I'll just call upon someone. Anita Mataji, would you like to read? I don't know if you're in the position to read. It's quite late for you now. Okay, we'll ask someone else then. Yes, Neha Mataji, please read.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. A report. There are various. Am I audible, Prabhuji?
Yeah.
There are various grades of men, and out of many thousands, one may be sufficiently interested in transcendental realization to try to know what is the self, what is the body, and what is the absolute truth. Generally, mankind is simply engaged in the animal propensities, namely eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, and hardly anyone is interested in transcendental knowledge. The first 6 chapters of the Gita are meant for those who are interested in transcendental knowledge, in understanding the self, the super self, and the process of realization by Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and discrimination of the self from matter. However, Krishna can be known only by persons who are in Krishna consciousness. Other transcendentalists may achieve impersonal Brahman realization, for this is easier than understanding Krishna. Krishna is the supreme person, but at the same time, he is beyond the knowledge of Brahman and Paramatma. The yogis and jnanis are confused in their attempts to understand Krishna. Although the greatest of the impersonalists, Sripad Shankaracharya, has admitted in his Gita commentary that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, his followers do not accept Krishna as such, for it is very difficult to know Krishna, even though one has transcendental realization of impersonal Brahman.
Yes. So you see, impersonal Brahman realization is not that rare. We should know one thing: there are many people who are partially Brahman realized, even in our human society. There are many like that, who are partially Brahman realized. Brahman realized means, to some extent, having no fear of death, because you know you are immortal. Taking the example of that famous Greek philosopher, Socrates. He was sentenced to death, and that time Socrates expressed, you should first catch me, then you can kill me. So his understanding was, I am spirit soul, you cannot even touch me, how can you kill me? And Prabhupada, when he heard that, Prabhupada said, see, he is Brahman realized. So even people who have been practicing some kind of spiritual life, not necessarily belonging to a society called ISKCON, maybe from any society, or not maybe belonging to any society, they may also have some degree of Brahman realization. It's possible, right? And that is the reason they also become quite attractive spiritual leader in the society. Sometimes they have something nice to share with people, some knowledge which makes sense, they give to people. But even amongst them, it's very difficult to find someone who knows Krishna completely, fully. That's very rare. That's not an easy thing, actually. That's quite rare. So for devotees in ISKCON, because that's a very common thing, everyone knows the statement, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We may sometimes think, what's so rare about it? Right? What's so rare about it? Everyone knows in ISKCON. All the devotees know that. What's so rare about it? So that's because we are only looking at the small well called ISKCON, and then we are not looking in the ocean called the material world. So that small well, yes, has people who know Krishna to some extent, but the ocean of material existence is full of people who have no idea about Krishna. Nothing they know. Not even a little bit. So regarding this, let's look at some very interesting things explained by the Acharyas. Which screen are you seeing now? Are you seeing the slide? No. Here the word tattvata has come, right? In the last line, the last word. Which verse from previous unit had this word? Remember? Yes?
Yogi Nama.
Janma karma chame divyam.
Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti
Tattvataha.
tattvataha 4.9. So there Krishna mentioned, if you know me in truth, you go out of the material existence, material world. You come back to my spiritual abode. But then here he says, Manushanam Sahasreshu, only few people will be able to get that. It's going to be very, very rare. So there are countless jivas in all different kinds of bodies. Out of that, only few are human beings. There are thousands of human beings who are who have the knowledge of scriptures made available to them. But only one of those thousands endeavors to see Atma and Paramatma. It holds true, actually. There may be thousands of people who have Bhagavad-gita at their homes, but there might be only one who might be reading it, right? So similarly, there are thousands of people who have scriptures available to them, but only one tries to see Atma and Paramatma. And there are thousands of people who see Atma and Paramatma, but only one amongst them will be able to know Krishna in truth. That is how rare it is to know about Krishna. So when we were new to Krishna consciousness, we used to ask this question to devotees senior to us. Then how is that we know about Krishna? Are we that special souls who are one amongst millions and billions who are getting to know about Krishna? Are we that much special? I mean, it's okay, you can be a little special, but that much special? Once among millions to know about Krishna. So of course, we don't know Krishna fully yet. But the answer to that question is, how are we so special that we are getting to know about Krishna? For that, there is no credit to us, actually. For that, the credit goes to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He wants people to know about Krishna, about himself. The Supreme Lord wants. And that's why people in the material world at present are getting to know about Krishna. The credit goes to him. Once Srila Prabhupada was in a walk and he was telling devotees, disciples, that it requires great fortune to become a devotee of Krishna. So the disciple asked, Prabhupada, what did I do in my past life so that I got this good fortune? And Prabhupada said, you did not do anything. I gave you good fortune. I came and I made you fortunate. You did not do anything. You had no previous qualification for it. It's me coming to your life made you fortunate. So it's the special mercy of Gauriya Vaishnavas or Vaishnavas in general in Kali Yuga that they are giving birth to people's good fortune. I want to hear about one story about Prabhupada, how good fortune gets created. Two stories I can tell if time permits, but one story I'll tell. Srila Prabhupada, when he was on Jaladuta ship and he was going to United States, his ship had just entered into the harbor at Boston. He was not supposed to, land there. He was supposed to just stay there for some hours. The ship had some kind of, filling to be done, oil filling to be done, or some work was there. So it just entered into the harbor stayed there for some time, and then went to the next port. So at that time, when the ship was going in, Srila Prabhupada was standing on the deck. And he was looking at the city of Boston, the skyscraper buildings, everything. And at that time, there was another ship going out from that dock. So now in India, you must have seen that when truck drivers, they passed across, the bus drivers, when they pass across, the auto rickshaw drivers, when they pass across, they wave their hand. Your journey is ending, my journey is starting. So all the best, something like that, wish you good luck. So when this ship was coming in and the other ship was going out, the captain of the other ship, he waved his hand. He was waving it to the captain of Jaladuta. But Prabhupada was standing on the deck, and Prabhupada saw this man is waving hand. He's waving hand. So he thought he's waving hand at me. So Prabhupada also waved his hand like that. He did not know actually he's waving hand at the captain of the ship. So he also waved his hand back like that. And this person then noticed Prabhupada on the deck. He had not seen anyone before like that, totally clad in orange clothes from top to bottom, very effulgent, very shining, bright, and very happy. So this person could not remove his eyes from the figure of Srila Prabhupada. He kept gazing at Prabhupada, and he was waving his hand, and that ship was going in towards the depth of the sea, and the Jaladuta stood there at the port. This image of Prabhupada remains stuck in the mind of that person. So much so that every day he would remember Prabhupada, that picture, that image. The next city where his ship landed, he came out on the dock, came into the city, and the first people he met were devotees who were distributing books. And then they gave him the books, he took the books. When he started reading the books in his ship, he went back, he was reading the books. There then he saw the picture of Prabhupada, the same person whom you saw on the ship, And he read the book. Later on, he became a devotee. Then he became a sannyasi. It all started with that one exchange, just that one exchange, And it brought out such a good fortune for him. Just one exchange. Another story. Prabhupada was traveling by flight, and his secretary, servant, Shrutakirti Prabhu was with him. So there were 3-4 people traveling with Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada had a habit, as soon as he would board the plane and the plane would start to take off, he would ask the devotees, is there something to eat? So whatever devotees carried, they served Prabhupada. They did not take the food provided in the flight. So they served Prabhupada whatever was there. So then at that time, the air hostess came. She was serving. In the flight, there are sections, the business class, the economic class, right? So she came from the business into the economic class, and she saw Prabhupada and all these other people looking a little strange. So she asked them, can I serve you something? And they said, we don't take anything from the flight pantry. We don't take anything. Said, okay, sure, but we have fruits and milk. Would you like to take fruits and milk? So Prabhupada was there, servant was there, servant looked at Prabhupada. Prabhupada, is that okay? And he said, yes, fine. Let her bring the fruits and milk. So she went to the business class. They would not serve fruits and milk to the economic class people. They would serve it only to the business class people. But because these were special kind of people, she went to the business class and brought fruits and milk from inside. Meanwhile, the devotees, they had carried some puffed rice with them, puffed rice in India, we call it moody, right? So puffed rice, and some peanuts were in that, mixed with puffed rice. It was served on Prabhupada's plate. So Prabhupada ate half of it, and the remaining, portion he shared. You can take. So when this lady came back with fruits and milk, what she did is that was very strange. She immediately, took that puffed rice and put it in her mouth without even asking, just to taste what it is. And Shruti Kirti Prabhu, who was traveling with Prabhupada, was quite amazed that how can someone like her, an air hostess, do something like that? This is not something in etiquette that you just take someone from someone's plate and then you try to taste that. And a lady like her would not do that. She's definitely taught to not behave like that, right? So he was looking at Prabhupada. This is not usual. And Prabhupada neglected, as if that's fine, no problem, it's okay, it happens, And when she brought fruits and milk, he also said, how is that she's serving us so nicely? He was trying to, in fact, point it out that because you are a very special person, some very special thing is happening now. And Prabhupada was trying to ignore that kind of comments. He's saying, no, it's quite usual. Ladies, they like to serve. That's in their nature. Nothing unusual about it. So he was kind of trying to avoid that kind of remark to come from his servant. This incident happened. That lady went. Prabhupada was very happy. He ate fruits, drank some milk also. Now, Shruti Kirti Prabhu, after decades, he is in US and he happens to meet a devotee who is a book distributor who travels to different countries distributing books. So that devotee was telling him stories, how he met someone, gave him a book, that person became a devotee, like that. So then he started telling him a story about his adventure in Brazil. He said, once I was in Brazil and I was distributing books. I was having a van. I would travel to different cities, go to different homes, knock on the door, approach people and give them books if they were interested. So one day I was in one strange city in Brazil. I did not know anyone there. And I happened to knock on the door. When I knocked on the door, after some time, a lady came. She opened. As soon as she opened the door, I heard Prabhupada's chanting voice coming from inside. So I was thinking, oh, is she a devotee? Because I'm hearing Prabhupada's tape, he's chanting. So conversation built on. She invited him in. And when he went inside, he saw not just that Prabhupada's tape was there was a full altar with Shishikanitai there. There was Tulsi there. There were many books of Prabhupada there. So this man asked her, how come in this city where there is no devotee, you alone are living and practicing Krishna consciousness so nicely? What made you become a devotee? So this lady said, years ago, I was an air hostess, and I was in a flight. And in that flight, Prabhupada was there. And I ate from his plate little puffed rice. I don't know what happened to me after eating that puffed rice. Suddenly I changed. And then I got these books and then I became a devotee. And then this devotee is telling this story to Srila Kirti Prabhu, who was also in the same flight. And when he heard this story, he was literally jumping off his seat. Oh, I was also there on that same flight. I knew something very special is going to happen to this lady because she is doing something unusual, And he said, this is what happened. She became a devotee by eating the puffed rice off the plate from Srila Prabhupada. So this is how we see that something very rare like Krishna consciousness is made available to people by the mercy of devotees of Krishna. Though this is a very rare thing, it becomes possible. That's their special gift. That's why Prabhupada's shop, Matchless Gift, deserves that name. He gave matchless gift of Krishna to everyone. And that's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mood. This is a song written by Premananda Das, a poet from Odisha. Very nice song. He says, Uttama adhama kicho na bachila, yachiya dilaka kola, kahe premananda emana gauranga, hidaya dhoriya bola. He's saying, Premananda Das is saying, Uttama adhama kicho na bachila. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is that form of God who doesn't see whether you are qualified or unqualified, whether you are high or low. You are born in a great family, a low family. Uttama adhama kichuna bachila, yachiya dilaka kola. Whoever will ask him, give me Krishna, Sri Chaitanya will give. He's so merciful, so kind. Kahe Premananda Emana Gauranga Hridaya Dhariya Bola. That's why Premananda Das is saying, keep such great Gaurang Mahaprabhu in your heart, because there cannot be anyone greater than him. Even if you're not so qualified, he'll give Krishna to you. So this is special mercy of Sri Chaitanya, that people of Kali Yuga are getting this rare knowledge. Prabhupada, that's why once said, one who is not a devotee is unfortunate. One who is a devotee is most fortunate. But one who leaves devotional service is most unfortunate, because he is then missing on the greatest gift that he or she might have received in his or her life. The most valuable gift, devotional service. One who leaves that is most unfortunate, very, very unfortunate. Okay, done. So we give you a break now. See you after a few minutes.
Hare
Welcome back. So now we'll start the new section, verse 4 through 12, which speaks about knowing Krishna as the source of material and spiritual energies. Jnana. Jnana is Krishna's energies. So we'll start discussing the energies now. Verse 7.4. Bhumirapo nalo vayu khammano buddhirevacha ahankar itiyam me bhinna prakritir ashtadha. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. It goes from gross to subtle. Earth is most gross. Next is water. Next is fire. Next is air. Next is ether. So that's gross to subtle. Next is mind. Then intelligence. Then the most subtle material element is ego. Very, very subtle. What is that ego? That I am this, I am that. That is that ego. That's the most subtle. And then what is the next thing which is subtle to ego, which is not material but spiritual? That is spirit soul, Atma. So here Krishna is talking about his material energy. This material energy of Krishna is also known as Aparashakti. 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 And it's of 8 types. It is separated energy of Krishna. We have discussed this in the introduction of the course. It is a separated energy or the material energy, also known as Aparashakti or Maya Shakti. And it is inferior in nature. Why it is inferior? Anyone recalls? It's a long time back we discussed. It's a technical understanding. Why?
Consciousness?
Has no consciousness. Very good. That's why it's called inferior. Doesn't have consciousness. Like earth on its own, earth doesn't have any consciousness, right? All these elements, they don't have any consciousness. They're material. And they're separated. Why they're called separated? Anyone remembers the example that I had given to explain Bhinna Prakriti, separated energy of Krishna? I had given some example in the introduction of the course to explain.
Which I don't remember the example, but milk of the cow, from the cow, that could be given as an example.
But then, yeah, okay. That is correct example. But I had given some other example to explain the difference between
Bulb.
separated and connected. Separated and connected. Because the next energy, which will be explained in verse 5, is Krishna's spiritual energy or the living entities, and those are connected. So what is the difference between these two? The example which I had given was of a person wearing clothes. So the body of the person can be compared to that energy which is always connected to that person as long as the person is living in the body. But then the cloth that the person puts on the body is separated, because you put it on, you remove it off, and when it's off, then though it has relation to you because it was worn by you, still it is not now connected to you anymore. It is disconnected. So that's called separated. And what example Mataji gave was also correct. Milk coming from the cow is separated. It has connection with that cow, but once it's out of the cow, it has got no connection, basically. Doing anything to the milk won't affect the cow anyway. So that's separated. So Krishna said, these are my separated energies. And the deity, presiding deity behind these energies is Durga Devi. So these energies of 8 types, the names are given there. The purport is a technical one. The subject explained in the purport will be re-explained in chapter 13 in much more detail. So we'll discuss it there, where it will be explained that the body or kshetra is made up of 24 elements. So that will be covered there, explained in detail there. Here we'll just read the purport, first 2 paragraphs. Okay, Sureka Mataji, you can read the paragraph, first paragraph. Please read.
Yes. The science of God analyzes the constitutional position of God and his diverse energies. Material nature is called Prakriti, or the energy of the Lord in his different Purusha incarnations, expansions, as described in the Sattvata Tantra. Vishnu's.
Sorry. Unmute yourself again, Mataji.
Vishnu's tu tarini rupani purushanya ato vidhu ekam tu mahatta shastra dvityam tva ananda samsthitam trityam sarva bhuta stham tani Jnanatva vimuchyate. For material creation, Lord Krishna's planetary expansion assumes 3 Vishnu. The first one, Mahavishnu, creates the total material energy known as Mahatattva. The second, 𝗪𝗵 Vishnu, enters in the all universes to create diversity in each of them. The third, kshirodakshay Vishnu, is diffused as the all-pervading super soul in all the universes and is known as Paramatma. He is present even within the atoms. Anyone who knows these three Vishnu can be liberated from material entanglement.
Thank you, Mataji. Let's go to the next verse. I'm not discussing the last paragraph because we'll be discussing this again in chapter 13 in detail. Next verse. Then Krishna mentions about his spiritual energy. Apariyamitastvanyam prakritim vidhi me param jiva bhuta mahabaho yayedam dharyate jagat. Besides these, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mind, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. So this energy is the para prakriti, or the superior energy of Krishna, also known as Jiva Shakti or marginal potency or Tathastha Shakti. So many different names for one thing only. Tathastha Shakti, and this is considered superior because it has consciousness. So what is it doing? It is trying to exploit the resources of the inferior energy. And is that not what is happening in the world? That's what people are doing. Everyone is doing that. We are trying to use the resources available to us from material nature. Material nature provides us earth, water, fire, air, ether, and we are trying to use that. All the manufacturing that we do, everything that's going on is basically a manipulation of all the material energies that exist in the nature. That is gross. Then people are there like psychiatrists, neurophysicists, psychologists. They deal with the mind, or trying to manipulate the mind. Then people are there who can also program the intelligence. So like that, people are playing with these energies as if they are toys in their hands. That's called exploiting here. Why it's called exploiting here? Because that playing is done not for the service of Krishna, but that playing is done for personal satisfaction. That's why it's called exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. Let's read this paragraph now. Who would like to read this? Hanit Mataji. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Here it is clearly mentioned that living entities belong to the superior nature or energy of the Supreme Lord. The inferior energy is matter manifested in different elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Both forms of material nature, namely gross, earth, etc., and subtle mind, etc., are products of the inferior energy. The living entities who are exploiting these inferior energies for different purposes are the superior energy of the Supreme Lord. And it is due to this energy that the entire material world functions. The cosmic manifestation has no power to act unless it is moved by the superior energy, the living entity. The energies are always controlled by the energetic, and therefore the living entities are always controlled by the Lord. They have no independent existence. They are never equally powerful as unintelligent men think. The distinction between living entities and the Lord is described in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.87.30 as follows.
Okay. Next verse. Then Krishna goes to explain that both of these energies, they work together to provide everything that exists in the material creation. Etadyoni bhutani sarvani ti upadharaya aham krishnasya jagataha prabhavaha pralayastatha. All created beings have their source in these two natures. These two natures. How everything has source in these two natures? The life that we have comes from the soul, which is the spiritual energy, and the body that we have comes from material nature. So a living entity in this world is a combination of both these energies, material outside, spiritual inside. Of all that is material and all that is spiritual in this world, know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution. So Krishna is the source, the origin, and Krishna is also the dissolution of both of these energies. Again, how? Because Krishna provides the soul, the existence, and Krishna also provides the material nature, the existence. And after the soul would have lived in the material creation for a certain period of time, and the material world will be annihilated, everything will go back into the body of Lord Krishna. So he is the creation of everything, and he's also the destruction of everything. He's the beginning of everything, and that's why he's the end of everything. That's the meaning here. Along with that, in the next verse, in Krishna mentions, I also maintain everything. Mattaha parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvam idam protam sutre manigana iva. O conqueror of wealth, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. This simile is very nice. It says that everything is held together by the Supreme Lord, just like a thread holds together the entire necklace, but the thread is not visible. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is not always visible, but he is in the background providing support and maintenance to everything that exists. He is that invisible thread. Purport. Yes, Usha Mataji can read the first paragraph.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat
There is
Pranam.
a common controversy over whether the Supreme Absolute Truth is personal or impersonal. As far as Bhagavad-gita is concerned, the Absolute Truth is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and this is confirmed in every step. In this verse, in particular, it is stressed that the Absolute Truth is a person, that the personality of Godhead is the Supreme Absolute Truth, is also the affirmation of the Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Param Krishnaha Satchid Ananda. Prabhuji, could you just little bit?
That's all, Mataji. We'll discuss a bit on what is explained here. So here it is mentioned, like, let's look at the purport and let's look at the Sanskrit verse, just to technically understand how Prabhupada is giving this explanation. In this verse, in particularly, it is stressed that the absolute truth is a person. In this verse, in particular, it is stressed that the absolute truth is a person. Now, if I ask you, where in the Sanskrit or where in the translation, English translation, is it written that God is a person?
Mai sarvam idam protam.
What does that mean? In English, what does that mean?
Mai means me. Sarvam means everything.
Okay.
Idam
Means this. So,
Hmm.
fine. How does that mean that God is a person?
Because he is holding the whole world, and for holding he needs some form.
For holding in its some form. Okay. What else?
That it denotes that he is talking about some, like he is some personality. He cannot be some invisible light or something. So,
but how do you come to that conclusion? Like Prabhupada says in this verse. Now, when he says in this verse, don't look at the purport, because that purport is Prabhupada's explanation. When he says in this verse, which means you have to look at the Sanskrit, or you have to look at the English translation of the verse. Where does it say
Guruji,
that
yeah,
absolute truth? Can I complete, Prabhu?
Yeah.
Absolute truth is a person. Where does it say? Yes, Mahesh.
it is said that matta parataram nanyat means there is nobody else than myself. There it says everything actually.
Okay, it says Mattaha Parataram Nanyat. There is no truth superior to me. That's how Prabhupada translated it. Then how does this line, there is no truth superior to me tells us that God is a person. Sripad said, absolute truth is a person. Yes, Anju Mataji?
The usage of the word mai means me. So he is, Lord is emphasizing that he himself. So when someone is saying about himself, that means it's an absolute truth, is not a personal, it's not impersonal, it has to be a person.
Okay, it's fine. So that's quite correct, Mataji. Basically, the derivation is from this understanding. Krishna is talking. And as he is talking, he is saying, there is no truth superior to me. So from there, Prabhupada is saying, if someone is talking, that person has to be a person. You cannot have an energy talking. You cannot have some light talking. You cannot have something impersonal talking. If there is someone talking, then that thing has to be a person. And here he is saying, Mataha parataram nanyat. There is no truth superior to me. And if that me is a person, which means that absolute truth is a person, God is a person. Very simple logic. God is talking and God is telling there is nothing superior to me. So absolute truth has to be a person. That's the derivation there. And there's no higher truth than me, which means if there is an impersonal aspect of God, that is also lower than the personal aspect of God. Impersonal aspect exists, not just for God, for everyone. For me also, there is an impersonal aspect. For all of you also, there is an impersonal aspect. It exists for every personal object or being. There is an impersonal aspect to it. But then that personal aspect is the foundation or support for the impersonal aspect. To give an example, the light coming from the bulb is impersonal. But that light cannot exist without the bulb, which has a shape and a form. So the impersonal aspect exists on the basis of the personal aspect. Similarly, if God has an impersonal nature, that impersonal nature exists on the basis of God's personal nature. Right? A person is, let's say, the owner of a company. Sripad used to give this example. So he used to say that that person is impersonally present in the entire company. Because that person gets reports about what's going on in which department, what is the manufacturing status now, everything. So that person is impersonally present everywhere. But for that person to be impersonally present, that person should also be personally present somewhere. And then that impersonal exists because of the personal. So Matta Parataram Nanyat proves that God is a person. It also proves that that personal feature of Krishna is higher than the impersonal feature of Krishna. That proves that. So on that basis, Prabhupada draws that line that absolute truth is a person. That's affirmed here. And then in order to confirm what he's saying, he's giving references from Brahma Samhita and then other scriptures, that what I'm telling is not just from Gita, it is also there in other scriptures. Now, this is a way of elaborating on a subject matter using Vedas as the reference. And this is how we should be writing our essays also. In essays, we are given a topic. Now that topic is presenting to you a situation, a doubt, a dilemma, a case, right? And now that particular topic has a solution or has an answer. Now that answer may be a very small answer, 1-line answer, 2-line answer, 1-paragraph answer. Okay. Once you have given that answer, you have to substantiate your answer from other references found in other scriptures. Then that makes it an essay, a correct essay, a bona fide essay, because you have answered it and you have substantiated your answer with the references from other places. So this is how you write an essay. All the purpose of Srila Prabhupada's are essays, basically. He takes a topic and then he elaborates on that. And he does that how? Taking references from different other Vedic scriptures. Okay. So this explains. Someone put a question. What does transcendental form mean? Transcendental form means spiritual form. Material form is not transcendental because that material form is made up of earth, water, fire, air, ether, etc. That's a physical form. It is within the three modes. But a form which is beyond the three modes, spiritual form, is called transcendental form. Being transcendental, it cannot be seen with material eyes, cannot be heard from material ears, cannot be touched by material hands and legs, but then it exists on a different dimension, spiritual dimension. Then, in order to elaborate on how Krishna maintains everything, Krishna gives 14 examples from verse 8 to verse 11. 14 examples that he is not just the source of everything, the destruction, the maintenance, but he's also the basis or essence of everything. Everything exists because Krishna exists. If Krishna won't exist, nothing would exist. That's the point. I exist because Krishna exists. Exists because Krishna exists. The world exists because Krishna exists. Everything in the world exists because Krishna exists. Just like if the root is not there, the tree cannot exist. The fruit cannot exist. The leaves cannot exist. Similarly, if Krishna won't be there, then nothing would exist. That's what he's proving here. He's the essence of everything. He maintains and he provides and he makes things possible. Next verse, verse number 8. Now, which screen are you seeing now?
Prabhu, we are having a different screen on the share. YouTube screen.
YouTube screen, huh? Okay. Sorry. So verse number 8. Rasoham apsu kaunteya prabhasmi shashishurya. After the verse. Yes. Rasoham apsu kaunteya prabhasmi shashishurya pranavaha sarva vedesho shabdah 𝗄𝗶𝗹𝗹 nishu. O son of Kunti, I am the taste of water. Taste is the essence of water. The light of the sun and moon, that's the essence of sun and moon. The syllable Om in the Vedic mantras, I am the sound in ether and the ability in man. So 5 things are given here. All these things are the essence of the other thing mentioned. And Krishna says that essence is me. And that essence exists because of my existence. And Srila Prabhupada explains, this is how Krishna is teaching Arjuna to see Krishna everywhere. Because Krishna mentioned in chapter 6, Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam chamay pashyati. One who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, that person never becomes lost to me. So here Krishna is teaching Arjuna how to practically do that. How to see Krishna everywhere by seeing everything connected to Krishna. We'll read the purport here. Someone please read the first paragraph. Kavya Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Purport. This verse explains how the Lord is all pervasive by his diverse material and spiritual energies. The Supreme Lord can be preliminarily perceived by his different energies, and in this way he is realized impersonally as the demigod in the sun is a person and is perceived by his all-pervading energy, the sunshine. So the Lord, although in his eternal abode, is perceived by his all-pervading diffusive energies. The taste of water is the active principle of water. No one likes to drink seawater because the pure taste of water is mixed with salt. Attraction of water depends on the purity of the taste. And this pure taste is one of the energies of the Lord. The impersonalist perceives the presence of the Lord in water by its taste, and the personalist also glorifies the Lord for his kindly supplying tasty water to quench man's thirst. That is a way of perceiving the Supreme. Practically speaking, there is no conflict between personalism and impersonalism. One who knows God knows the impersonal conception and personal conception are simultaneously present in everything, and that there is no contradiction. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya established his sublime doctrine, Achintya Bheda and Abheda Tattva, simultaneous oneness and difference.
Thank you, Mataji. So here you see something very nice and easily explained by Srila Prabhupada. He says that water has a taste. Of course, Shweta Mataji, your comment is correct. Science says water has no taste, but that's wrong. Water has taste. That's why we drink water, and it quenches our thirst. So he says here, you see that for the water, there can be two ways of looking at it and its taste. One thing is when an impersonalist sees the presence of the Lord in water, he will only see it by seeing that there is a taste in water. So he looks at the energy and he appreciates the energy of the Supreme. And then he thinks this energy belongs to the Supreme Almighty. And that's why maybe he is appreciative of that. But a personalist, a devotee, will not just taste the water, like the taste, but also express his gratitude or thankfulness to God for giving him water to quench his thirst. A very thin border or thin line difference is there between an impersonalist and a personalist. An impersonalist appreciates, but a personalist glorifies. An impersonalist likes, but a personalist expresses that he likes. That's a very little difference between impersonalism and personalism. You know, like for example, I like you and I think about you. That is impersonal. But if I like you, I think about you, and then I tell you I like you, that's personal. There's a very thin border difference between that, right? So there can be very exalted devotees of Krishna who can be impersonalists also. They're in Shantarasa, right? And personalism means that you have love and you like to express that love. That's how there can be impersonalism and personal dealings also with people. Like you may like someone, you may adore someone, you may respect someone a lot. But if you don't express that, you are being impersonal. And when you express it, it's called personalism. Like for giving a simple example, a person enters the company office premises, and then that person is respectful towards all. He doesn't fight with anyone, he doesn't backbite, he doesn't complain, he's very honest, calm and cool-headed, but he doesn't talk to anyone. That's called being impersonal. But now, if he likes everyone, he respects everyone, and when he enters the company premises in the morning, he looks at everyone and then he greets them. Good morning, sir. Good morning, ma'am. How are you? Hope you have a great day. That's called being personal. Very little difference. Very little difference. So an impersonalist will, when he or she drinks the water, will be able to connect. Okay, the taste of this water is Krishna. That's all. Nothing more than that. Once Prabhupada mentioned, if a drunkard is drinking wine and then thinks that that taste of wine is Krishna, that is also okay. That's fine. We'll get some spiritual benefit, you know. So, but of course, a drunkard will not be able to think so much. So, like, let's say you're drinking lemonade, orange juice, apple juice, whatever. That taste is Krishna. Now, this connect is difficult to make always, but let's say you're able to make that connect, then you are one step ahead in your spiritual life, you are now an impersonalist, but a transcendentalist. Then the next step would be, okay, the water is tasty. I drank the water, it quenched my thirst. Then I expressed that to Krishna. Thank you so much, Krishna, for giving me water. Then that becomes personal, right? So this topic of personal and impersonal is very important also for building up healthy relationships. Sometimes people, they don't express what they feel about someone. Good also many times. So that's an impersonal appreciation of the person. Social media is most of that only, right? You like someone's video, that's an impersonal appreciation. You follow someone, that's an impersonal appreciation. But personal appreciation means, okay, you like a person, you speak it out, or you do something for that person in reciprocation. That's called personal. That's called personal. So if we learn to become more personal with people, we'll also learn to become more personal with Krishna. And if we are very impersonal with people around us, we'll also be very impersonal with Krishna. Right? That's also one form of spirituality, but not something which is very much appreciated by Lord Krishna. That's also one form of spirituality. Now I'll give you an example. Isaac Newton seeing an apple fall from the tree. Seeing an apple fall from the tree is observing a natural phenomenon, right? An apple is falling from the tree, is observing a natural phenomenon, and he's getting a question in the mind, why is the apple falling down? Why is it not going up? And then he derives a general conclusion, everything falls. So then he comes to think that there must be something which is pulling it downwards. And then he says, okay, there is a force which pulls it downwards, right? Further development in that field makes him realize or understand there is a gravitational force which pulls things downward. This is a materialistic, mechanistic view of a natural phenomenon. There's nothing spiritual about it. It is a material, mechanistic view. However, there can be as I had mentioned somewhere in one of my quotes, however, there can be a sadhu who is walking in a forest, and for days he has not eaten anything. And then that sadhu sees an apple fall from the tree. Okay. Now, if that sadhu sees an apple fall from the tree, that sadhu may also think, there are so many apples on this tree, and there are so many apple trees, but this particular apple from this particular tree has fallen, right? And now if that sadhu thinks, thank you, Krishna, I was so hungry, you gave me an apple. You gave me an apple. This particular apple has come to me by your grace. It is falling right when I am walking past this forest in front of my eyes. So then he thanked Krishna for that. He's also observing the same physical phenomenon. But this is not a material view, it is a spiritual view. It's a spiritual perspective because he's thanking Krishna. And it's not impersonal, it is personal because he's thanking Krishna. So you can see how very subtle is the the philosophical aspect of anything that happens. It's very subtle. One person is observing an apple fall that is totally material. Another person is observing an apple fall that is totally spiritual. Depends on what? Depends on the attitude of the person. So Gita here is imploring all of us. We also develop that kind of attitude in our day-to-day life. That when we see things happen, we are able to see the Krishna connect, Krishna's hand in that. Seeing Krishna's hand in everything that's happening. See that, and through that make spiritual progress. He is the essence of everything, every single thing that happens. He is just giving some examples for us to understand better. That's all. But the principle is this. that we learn from that and we see things like that. Okay, right? Go to the next one. Then he explains how, Prabhupada explains how he is the light in the sun and the moon, his Omkar. Next. Punyo Gandha Prithivyam cha Tejaschasmi Vibhavasau Jivanam Sarvabhuteshu Tapasvisu. I am the original fragrance of the earth. Earth has fragrance. How do we know that? When it's rainy season and the rain falls on earth, on the soil. I don't know. In Bombay, you can't experience that much. But if you have lived in a village and on natural soil, when the raindrops fall, you can smell that fragrance of earth. Very, very nice fragrance is there. So their fragrance comes from earth. The earth element brings smell, fragrance. I am the heat and fire. I am the life of all that lives, and I am the penances of all ascetics. How earth has fragrance can be seen in flowers. The seed of the flower has no fragrance. The water that you put is also not having any fragrance, right? But what comes out of that plant is a very fragrant flower. So from where did the fragrance come? It borrowed it from earth. Depending on which kind of plant, it borrows that particular kind of fragrance from earth. If it's a jasmine plant, jasmine fragrance. If it's a rose plant, rose fragrance. If it's a lemon tree, lemon has its own fragrance. How interesting is Krishna's creation. So from earth, it gets the fragrance, what is required for it. It borrows it from there. And that is the reason if you do this artificial plantation of things, but it's not so natural, but some other we plant tomatoes and all that stuff, you'll find that they grow big, but without any fragrance. Because it's all artificial. You're not giving it the place which it needs to borrow fragrance, which means natural soil, right? So the fruit or the plant will grow, but will not have any fragrance. No fragrance at all. Like the roses that you get in Bombay, no fragrance. No fragrance at all. But you get the roses in Vrindavan, very fragrant. Because those are naturally grown roses. The artificial ones, no fragrance. So it borrows from the earth. Next, he says, I am the life of all that lives, and I am the penances of all ascetics. Bijamam sarva bhutanam vidhipartha sanatanam buddhir buddhimatam asmi tejas tejasvinamaham. O son of Pritha, know that I am the original seed of all existence, the intelligence of the intelligent, and the prowess of all powerful men. Now, how can this help us see Krishna everywhere? When you see someone very intelligent, very easy. That intelligence is coming from Krishna. When you see someone very powerful, very simple. That power is coming from Krishna. When you see someone very successful, that success is coming from Krishna. So then you are able to appreciate that person also, because you are able to see Krishna's presence in the life of that person. Then you are able to appreciate that person. And we don't become envious of that person, because we see Krishna's presence in our life and we see Krishna's presence in that person's life. So we understand, I am not lacking anything that that person has. I also have, you also have. You have in a different form, I have in a different form. I have ice cream, chocolate flavor, you have strawberry flavor, that's all. Means Krishna in different flavor is with you, different flavor with me. In some, it's in the flavor of intelligence. In some, it's in the flavor of beauty. In some, it's the flavor of power and control, right? But it's the same Krishna who is present in different people in the form of his energy. So Krishna is saying, you see a person doing wonderful things, that is coming from me. You see someone singing very nicely, that ability coming from Krishna, right? So these examples are very practical ways of, learning how to see Krishna everywhere. That's why Krishna is putting it here. Balam balvatam chaham kamaraga vivarshitam Dharma viruddha bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava. I am the strength of the strong, devoid of passion and desire. I am sex life which is not contrary to religious principles, O Lord of the Bharatas, Arjuna. So he's saying, I am the strength of the strong. Which kind of strength? Not which is full of passion and deep attachment. No, the strength which people who are tolerant, they have, that kind of strength. Free from passion, but born of dutifulness, born of selflessness, kindness, compassion, that kind of strength. Like the strength that Mother Sita showed when she was told by Lord Sri Ram, you have to go through the fire test. The strength that Mother Sita showed when she was told, now you have to go to the forest. Sri Ram is banishing you to the forest. That strength which is born of selflessness, which is born of sacrifice, dutifulness, service attitude. That strength, Krishna is saying, I am. Not the strength of Adolf Hitler, of course not. Not that kind of strength, but the strength which is free from passion and desire. That strength, Krishna says, I am. So when you see any person showing that kind of strength, fortitude, determination, patience, tolerance, that is Krishna's mercy or Krishna's favor. That is Krishna's, vibhuti or power in that particular person. Then next, last, yes, ye chaiva satvika bhava rajasas tamasascha ye matta eveti tan vidhi natvaham te shrute mahi. Know that all states of being, be they of goodness, passion, or ignorance, are manifested by my energy. So everything is made up of three modes, and Krishna says, everything that's why is coming from me. I am in one sense everything. This doesn't mean that everything is God. People, they take a wrong meaning out of it. When Krishna says, I am in everything, or I am in one sense everything, it doesn't mean that everything is him then. Right? It doesn't mean the opposite is also true. He is everything, but not that everything is him. They are two different things. Like, for example, a person loves you so much, and you love that person so much. So then you can tell that person, you are everything for me, right? Which means I value you so much that you are everything for me. But that doesn't mean that everything becomes that person. Then you see a tissue paper, that is also that person. You see a plastic ball, that is also that person. You see a glass of water, that is also that person. No. So it's a poetic way of expressing, actually. I am everything, which means the love of that person towards Krishna makes him feel that Krishna is everything for him. There is nothing more that exists for him. I am in one sense everything, but I am independent. I am not under the modes of material nature, for they, on the contrary, are within me. Okay. The last paragraph for us to read today. Raseshwari Mataji, please read this purport. Have you unmuted yourself?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Prabhuji, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, we can hear you.
All material activities in the world are being conducted under the three modes of material nature. Although these material modes of nature are emanations from the Supreme Lord Krishna, he is not subject to them. For instance, under the state laws, one may be punished, but the king, the lawmaker, is not subject to that law. Similarly, all modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance are emanations from the Supreme Lord. Krishna is not subject to material nature. Therefore, he is Nirguna, which means that these gunas or modes, although issuing from him, do not affect him. That is one of the special characteristics of Bhagwan, or the Supreme Personality of God. Hare.
Sorry, Thank you so much, Mataji. Any questions or comments? Navanidhi Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hmm.
Prabhuji, is Pradhan and Mahatattva the same?
Not the same.
Prabhuji, what is the difference? Because in verse 4, there is this word Mahatattva. And in the last unit, we have learned about Pradhan.
Yeah. So different philosophers, they when they explain the elements of the universe, they do the categorization differently. Okay. So some people, they say the material world is made up of 24 elements. And some people say it's made up of 25 elements. It's just how they count and calculate. So in some list, you'll find Pradhan mentioned as the 24th one. In some list, you'll find Mahatattva mentioned as the 24th one. Are both correct? Both are correct. Because Pradhan and Mahatattva are related to each other. How they're related to each other? Pradhan is that state of material existence in which all the material elements are mixed together and they are still not manifest. Which means they are there, but they are not really materially visible. And when on Pradhan, Lord Krishna casts his glance, when Vishnu looks at Pradhan, that makes Pradhan active. Means previously it was in passive state, now it has become active. Pradhan in active state is called Mahatattva. Got it?
Yes.
Got it, no? So
Yes,
it's
yes.
the same thing in passive state called Pradhan, in active state called Mahatattva.
Mahatattva.
Prabhupada used to give a very simple example to explain. He said, wife who is not pregnant and wife who is pregnant.
Okay.
It's the same wife, but one is pregnant and the previous state was unpregnant. Similarly, material nature, Pradhan is, you can say, when not pregnated by the Supreme Lord, and Mahatattva means when pregnated by the Supreme Lord.
But Prabhuji, the definition which was given was that the material world is a sum total manifestation of the three modes of material nature, technically
Yeah.
called the Pradhana.
Then that Pradhan, which is a mixture of 24 elements, is made up of 3 modes.
Okay.
So it all starts with 3 modes. These 3 modes are then transforming into 24 elements. Okay.
But here is written manifestation of the 3 modes. So manifestation.
What does manifestation means? The 3 modes existing and then 3 modes coming in another form. That's called manifestation. Here, the manifestation doesn't mean that from non-physical it has become physical. Here, manifestation means the 3 modes have transformed themselves into another thing. So the 3 modes have transformed themselves into something next. That's called Pradhan. But that is still unmanifest. And then in that Pradhan, when the Supreme Lord, he injects the living entities through his glance. The Supreme Lord Krishna, when he looks at the Pradhan, through his glance, the living entities, the jivas, they enter Pradhan. And what did we study now in this chapter? Krishna mentioned, right? Till the spiritual energy not enter material energy will be inactive. So when Krishna glances upon Pradhan and he injects the spiritual energy, the life, the spirit soul, jivas into Pradhan, then that Pradhan becomes active and it's called Mahatattva. Okay. Now that Mahatattva is again a mixture of 24 things. Now because it has become active, then these 24 things will start getting disintegrated. It was all together, jumbled up together, it gets disintegrated. Depending on now what was the desire of the jiva, that jiva will develop a particular kind of body. It's just like you take the soil, in the soil you put 10 kinds of seeds. Based on what kind of seed is there, a particular plant comes out of the same soil. So Mahatattva is like that soil in which the jiva is there. And based on the desire of the jiva, that jiva will develop a certain kind of body.
So Mahatattva is the next stage of Pradhan.
is the next stage.
Okay.
It's the active form.
And during
Pradhan is
any
the passive form.
and during annihilation, it goes into reverse order.
It will go in reverse order.
Okay.
So in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is explained from Mahatattva what will come? Ego will come. First thing that will come from Mahatattva is ego.
Ego.
Then ego will get mixed with Sattva Guna. It will produce something. Ego will get mixed with Rajoguna. It will produce something. Ego will get mixed with Tamoguna. It will produce something. And then that thing which is produced will again mix with Sattva Guna, Rajoguna, Tamoguna to produce the next, like that, you know, mixing, intermixing reaction happens, and you get such huge varieties of things that you see.
Prabhuji, one more question I have. What is the difference between commentary and purport? Commentary and purport, they are same?
Same.
Prabhuji, kindly.
Because at different places, it has been used commentaries by different our acharyas, and Prabhupada has written purports over them. So I'm always confused. What is the difference between commentary and purport?
Purport also means explanation. Commentary also means explanation.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Prabhuji, does this mean that consciousness is Mahapradhan then, if I, or it's different?
Consciousness is not one of these elements. Because all these elements are material. Consciousness is a quality of the spirit soul. That's why consciousness is not a material creation. It is something coming from spiritual energy. And that is the reason consciousness cannot be studied by material means. You see, this is the reason the medical scientists, they fail, because they can somewhat understand mind, they can somewhat understand intelligence, all that is material. But since they don't accept soul, they are not able to understand consciousness. It's not a material creation. It is there because of the soul. Now that's consciousness which is coming from soul, is a quality of soul, gets tinted by material objects which are around it. So then that consciousness appears to be a material consciousness because it gets tinted with the material objects that it interacts with. You know, I had given this example. Light coming from the bulb is actually coming from the bulb and is originally white or yellow. But when it gets tinted with the color of the glass, which may be red, green, blue, then that light appears to be red, green, blue. So a dog has consciousness, a man has consciousness. Man's consciousness originally is the same as dog's consciousness originally. But because of that dog body, that consciousness appears like a dog. And because of that human body, the consciousness appears like that of a human being.
Okay.
Got it? The body filters it. The body filters it. So when the dog talks, we call it barking. And when the human talks, then we call it talking.
I'm sorry.
For some human beings also you can say barking.
Prabhu, can you repeat the last line again?
Okay.
Which one? Different body and the consciousness becomes
different body means the consciousness will appear to us different. So in a dog's body, the consciousness will appear like that of a dog. In a human body, the consciousness will appear like that of a human being. Got it?
The soul and the super soul is same in all. It is these things which make a difference.
The souls are not the same. The quality of the soul is
quality of the soul. What I meant is quality of the soul.
Quality of the soul is the same. Quality of the soul is the same. Like for example, electricity or pencil battery is the same in different toys, but those different toys make different sounds.
Yes.
But the energy supply from the cell, the chemical energy is the same. So similarly, that original thing is the same. But what externally appears to us, the different sounds, the different forms, the different feel, all that is different because of the material structure. Right? So when we're saying studying Vedanta or spiritual study, it actually means study of this particular element called consciousness. When you study that consciousness, you find that's the same in all. So that's why we are all united together. We are one. And you start seeing then that spiritual oneness, and you stop seeing the material differences. Fine? Okay.
Thank you,
All
Prabhu.
right. Satyadev, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, you are explaining in the Mahat Tattva and how ego gets associated with each one and creates one factor and all. Why did Krishna create the ego, Prabhu, first of all? Because that is the biggest obstacle and we are all struggling. So just trying to understand, why did Krishna even create that element called ego?
Because if that element is not there, then how will you ever identify yourself with the material world? That element makes you identify with material world and also makes you think that you can enjoy the material world. If that element won't be there, then how will there be spiritual material connect? Ego connects the spirit to the matter. And then again, the question would be why that connect has to be there, because it's our desire. We want to, that verse said, right? What is the living entity doing? 7.5. What is 7.5 saying? Is exploiting the resources of material nature. Now, that's the desire of the jiva, the conditioned soul, the Baddha jiva. So if that person wants to execute this desire, there has to be a relation with material objects. That relationship is only possible because of ego. Ego is the chain that connects, that holds matter and spirit together. Now, dissolving ego means then you basically disconnect yourself from material energy. So
why it is known as false ego then?
It's called false ego because it's wrong identification. There is a true ego, which is totally fine. There's nothing wrong about that. The false ego means false identification. What is the false identification? Instead of identifying myself as spirit soul, I'm identifying myself with the body which is connected to the soul. So it's called false identification, false ego. Right?
Prabhu, how can we win over it in a day-to-day life practice? Means like we are novice and neophytes, and how can we practice defeating this ego?
Whether you are a novice, Mataji, or whether you are a great person, fighting ego is always difficult. So that's a war or a battle for every spiritualist to win over one's false ego. Now, how do anyone win over false ego? It's the same for everyone, new, old, or on this path or that path. The way to win over false ego is to first identify, why did I choose to have a false ego? And then undoing that. So Srila Prabhupada in Krishna consciousness movement makes it very simple. He says, the false ego exists because you want to do things separate from Krishna. So if you want to win over false ego, you bring back Krishna into your life. When you bring Krishna into your life, then the true ego will also come to your life. False ego exists because Krishna is out of my life. When Krishna will be back into my life, true ego will also come. So that's the easiest way of doing it, and that's the ultimate way of doing it. There can be, step-by-step ways of overcoming the ego, but this is like the final blow to false ego. You bring Krishna back to your life, Krishna will become the master of your ego, and then the false ego is gone. So by practicing sadhana bhakti, that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to bring our ego to our true state. I am Krishna's servant. That's the true ego. Why are we studying Bhagavad-gita? To understand this only. Right? Everything that we are doing is for this purpose only, to understand that I am Krishna's servant. Chanting Krishna's names, honoring Krishna prasadam, studying the books, writing exams, everything is to understand I'm Krishna's servant. Everything, I'm Krishna's servant. The purpose is that only. Every single thing. Putting tilak on your forehead, on your body, wearing kantimala. All those activities are to make us understand I'm Krishna's servant. Coming back to my true ego. So these activities will facilitate. That's why these activities are to be done. Right?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
But it's really a very tough job. For 2 or 3 days we practice all these things, and on the 4th day we think, why should I tolerate each and everything, and all comes again and again. It's very difficult.
Yeah, it is difficult. It is no way it is easy. It is true it's difficult. But then how can it be easy also? It's going to be difficult because we have gone far away from the reality. So now coming back to reality will also take time. We have marched way far from reality actually, right? So now coming back to reality is a bit painful. That's all. So it's difficult. Those who are close to reality, for them it may be not so difficult, but then those who are really far, for them it's going to be difficult. It will be difficult. It will not be easy. Anyone who says bhakti is easy is a fool, actually. Okay, it's not easy. He's either a fool or he's only new to bhakti. That's why it's easy. Otherwise, it's not easy. It's very difficult, actually. Very, very difficult. Because it's on gross level, it's very easy. But when you look at these subtle nuances, then it's very difficult. It's very difficult. It's just like driving a car. You have to always keep the steering proper, otherwise you may have an accident. So you have to always steer the mind in the right direction. The mind will go here, there, to that identification, to this identification. And you have to bring the mind always back to the same understanding. No, this is what you are supposed to think. This is how you're supposed to act. This is crossing the boundary of what you are supposed to do. So that's a very difficult job. It's very difficult. Those who are mothers, they know. Just like it's not easy to keep the child at one place. The child is restless, jumping here and there, moving around. Similarly, the mind is not easy to be kept at one place. Very difficult. Yes, Vrindarani Mataji, take the last question today.
Hare Krishna, I have a question about the previous unit. So if I'm allowed to ask.
Yeah, ask.
I cannot understand why the name of the 5th chapter is Karma Yoga, activities in Krishna consciousness. If there are activities in Krishna consciousness, why then they are called Karma Yoga?
See, okay. Thank you so much. See, in chapter 3, the title was Karma Yoga. In chapter 4, Krishna gave transcendental knowledge. That knowledge is about Krishna consciousness, because that knowledge is about Krishna. Okay. So now, chapter 5 is telling you what? You do chapter 3 with the knowledge given in chapter 4. You do the same thing which was taught in chapter 3, which is Karma Yoga, with the knowledge given in chapter 4. And the knowledge given in chapter 4 is Krishna consciousness, thinking about Krishna, knowing Krishna. So you do the same things in Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada gave the title Karma Yoga, action in Krishna consciousness. Okay. Now, why is it called Karma Yoga only? So here, he is not telling action in Krishna consciousness is Karma Yoga. He is saying Karma Yoga plus Krishna consciousness. Now, when you make Karma Yoga plus Krishna consciousness, it becomes Bhakti Yoga. And why Prabhupada puts the Bhakti Yoga there? Because Prabhupada wants to put Bhakti Yoga everywhere. And that is why many people don't like his Bhagavad-gita. But he wants to put Bhakti Yoga everywhere because he knows Bhakti is the highest solution. So why should I keep Bhakti for last chapter or chapter 9? I should start telling about Bhakti from chapter 1. So where there is no bhakti also, Prabhupada will put bhakti. Because he doesn't want to keep the person in any kind of confusion. He is thinking maybe this is the last day of this person. After that, he's not going to read my Bhagavad-gita anymore. So if he misses to read, the coming chapters, he will never know Bhakti to Krishna is the supreme most. So the way Prabhupada has written his purpose are that he is feeling the urgency, and he doesn't want any person to go away after reading his book and not understand that Bhakti is the most important thing. So you read any line from his book, Bhakti will be there, because he wants to tell people, you understand this much. And that's why he says, if you read only one line of my books, you'll understand everything. Because he has put everything in every single line, So it's his added flavor, actually. It's added flavor. He's putting Bhakti in chapter 5, where chapter 5 does not really talks about Bhakti. It talks about Nishkama Karma Yoga.
But Prabhuji, is it not like, sorry.
I didn't know how to fit it in the concept of yoga ladder.
That's why I said, there's a yoga ladder given by Krishna, but then there is a yoga ladder designed by Prabhupada. And that is specifically done for Kali Yuga people, especially of this time. His own way of, bringing people into bhakti and then taking them forward. So that's his yoga ladder. Okay.
Prabhuji, just one quick thing, Prabhuji, forgive me for asking this way. I understand the mood of Prabhupada to infuse bhakti at every sentence and every situation, but isn't it, I don't know what is the right word, I don't want to be disrespectful, but is it like an incorrect way or another way of interpreting every sentence from a bhakti point of view? Because this is some commentary I've written somewhere saying that Prabhupada is interpreting everything as a bhakti, but Krishna doesn't mean it as a bhakti, every word. Like that I heard somewhere. So I was just trying to understand.
Correct, that's correct. But then, what is the purpose of the interpretation?
Yeah, to bring all of us into the bhakti path.
And is that not the purpose of Krishna?
Yes.
So is Srila Prabhupada acting outside interest of Krishna?
No.
No. So it cannot be wrong, right? It cannot be wrong.
Yeah.
Like, for example, there is chapati kept in front of a child. But the chapati is very hard food for the child because the child is very small. So the mother takes the chapati, puts in her mouth, chews it properly, makes it a very nice paste, and then puts it in the mouth of the child. Is that wrong? No, that's for the good of the child, because the child cannot digest the hard chapati. So it's mother's compassion. She wants to feed, but she wants to feed in a way that the child will benefit from it. So it is Srila Prabhupada's compassion. He is giving us the same thing, which would be difficult for us to understand and come to the conclusion in the direct way, in this manner.
Understood. In a conversation, beautiful.
His compassion. His compassion. Now, people may not appreciate that compassion because they do not have that compassion.
Exactly.
Only a mother will be able to appreciate a mother's act, isn't it? Because she knows, I am mother, she's mother, can feel. Similarly here, a devotee will feel for what Prabhupada has done, and those who are not devotees, they don't feel for it. They think, oh, he's changing the meaning. He's not changing the meaning. He's actually just making it simpler, Like, for example, I'll give you another example. I don't know how many of you have prepared for entrance exams for engineering colleges. When you prepare for engineering colleges, the entrance exams, if you go to solve the problem in the orthodox manner, the problem will take 20 lines, 30 lines of, writing the formula, deriving a conclusion, then coming to the final conclusion, the answer. But when you prepare for competitive exams, the teachers, they teach you some tricks. And using those tricks, in 2 steps, you get the solution. Now, that's making it easy, but making it easy for what purpose? For benefiting the child or the student. That's what Prabhupada is doing. In fact, he should be He should be praised for it. It's his credit that he's making it simple and easy. Isn't it?
Yeah, totally agreed, Prabhu. Yeah, one of my friend in a conversation, he was showing a sloka and asked me, where is the word bhakti in this whole sloka and why is it interpreted in this book? And so I could not give him any right explanation.
Bhakti is not, might not be there in the shloka, but bhakti is there in the person who is speaking that shloka.
Understood. Totally
So,
understood.
Prabhupada is capturing that mood of the person, and he's specifying that. Isn't it, Prabhupada?
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Mother is making some preparation for you, then, one who doesn't love the mother will eat the preparation. But who loves the mother will eat the love with which the mother made the preparation. Isn't it? So Srila Prabhupada loves Krishna, so he's able to find Krishna's love in every single shloka. That is bhakti. And those who don't love Krishna, though that love is there, they're not able to find it. Right? All right, we'll stop here. Thank you so much. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you, Prabhuji.
Next week,
Fantastic. Very nice explanations, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Neha Mataji, you had a question.
Yes, Prabhuji, I have one question. I had put it in the chat box. Prabhuji, it is from the previous chapters.
What do you mean by having faith in the goal?
The goal, yes, Prabhuji.
Faith in the goal means the goal is possible. It is achievable. The goal exists. Like, for example, we are talking about spiritual world. So having faith in the spiritual world means the spiritual world exists. I have faith. So if I have faith that the spiritual world exists, then only will I try to go to spiritual world, right? Isn't it? So that's the faith in the goal.